our senses, right? We can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear.
They came up out my forest, they looked into my room. I was only 4 years old, I didn't know what to do. I was playing muscle men with a friend, I think the dude was named Vernon. He saw the M16s and stepped away from the curtains, and they kicked in the door. This is the DEA. They saw my father, and then they fucked up his face, and they cruised up the stairs with their M16s. They busted into my room and scared the fuck out of me. I saw my mama, I said, what the fuck's happening? She said, we're busted. I said, what the fuck does that mean? She said, for growing the weed under the basement floor. I said, the plant that dad smoked. She said, but there's more. They're gonna take up our house. They're gonna take all your toys. They're gonna take away data. They're gonna put them in bars. They're gonna take all our money. They're gonna take all your cake. The next day was my birthday. I'm not being fake. These motherfuckers, they're called the DEA. They're called the CIA. They're called the NSA. And today, they listen to everything that you say, but you don't give a fuck. You just go about your day. You're they keep a file on everyone, and we pretend that we're dumb. We sell all our metadata. It's worth more than a sum, but they don't give us back none because they know that we're numb. We got some stupid motherfuckers that just want to be safe, and they'll give up their freedoms, man. They'll give up their say. They spend $1 million on education just to join up the slaves. You're not American. Thoughts.
Hi, everybody. I'm Monumente Reme. This is my co-host, Tyson Strausberg, and welcome to Dangerous Thoughts, the YouTube show and podcast. Very soon we'll be live on some podcast networks, so that's some compelling stuff. But the YouTube show and podcast that dives headfirst into the shadowy realms of reality, exploring the edges where most fear to tread. But here we question everything. We're interested in literally every reality that is presented to us, and we fear nothing, from the mysterious mysteries, that's funny, of consciousness to the unsettling truths lurking behind the facade of everyday life. We peel back the layers to reveal the raw, unfiltered essence of our existence. I'm really excited about tonight because we have Dr. Kathleen Ball on the show, and she's an expert on the Knights Templar and has been researching them for a very long time. Actually, she has been, from what I learned earlier, she's, I think, the beginning of, and she will probably correct me on a lot of things that I say wrong, but I think she got interested during a near-death experience, and that was part of the trigger for her becoming a Indiana Jones of the modern world and tracking the Knights Templar and their mysteries. I'm so excited to talk to her because the Knights Templar guarded the secrets of, according to the simple everyday knowledge, they guarded the Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, the 10 Commandments, the secret bloodlines of Christ. There's a lot of theories about what these knights did for 900 years to regard the secrets of, I don't even know if it's Christianity, but I guess you could safely say the secrets of Christianity. And they have these wonderful quotes where they're a couple of, I can't tell you the dude that said it, but a lot of these knights have gone to their deaths regarding the secrets that they had. Also, the Templars were amazing builders. If you look at their temples and the stuff that they were able to accomplish over the Middle Ages, it's, we couldn't build that stuff today if we tried. Maybe we could, but I don't think so. I've seen some of those pictures. These guys could dig, these guys. And I think probably that's the connection to Freemasonry, but Michelle will tell us more about that. First, I want to talk about a documentary I saw today, and I think I can tie all these things together. The documentary that I watched today, Tyson, and you should absolutely see this, is the new Amityville documentary on Amityville and everything that happened there. Do you know that house out in
Amityville Horror, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So what originally happened there was a mafioso kid that was tied to the mafia through his father, went nuts one night, likely with his sister and another accomplice, and shot all 6 members of his family. And then, so the Amityville Horror came out. But I'll try to break it's a kind of a long story. Just stick with me. So it was decided that by the cops that he was a lone gunman. He killed all 6 members of his family face down in their beds in a 3-story house and then was captured the next morning, stoned when he brought everybody back to the house to show them what had happened, his friends and police officers, etc. They pinned the whole thing on him, and sort of the idea today is that he's the only person guilty of what happened there. But a lawyer moved a family into the house shortly afterwards. If you don't know the history of Amityville, let me just wrap it up for you real quick. That family spent 28 days in the house and had some creepy experiences. And the lawyer actually, for Ronnie DeFeo, who shot all these people in Amityville, and his family, his sisters, his brothers, his lawyer wanted to try to get him off on insanity. And so it's a possibility that the people that moved into the house next, they had a deal with the lawyer for a 5% piece of their story. 5% was going to go to Ronnie DeFeo, and they were going to sign a deal with this defense lawyer named something Weber, and try to sell this whole story that the house was haunted, demon possessed, darkness possessed, and in fact did that. But they broke ties with the lawyer. The lawyer thought, if I can get these guys to sign my piece of paperwork, I can convince people that the house made him crazy, I can get this guy off. That didn't work out. The biker, who was an ex-Vietnam veteran, and the children that moved in did have some experiences that they all remember, but mostly they remember their father being a sociopath and being interested in this house for reasons that we may not know, because he was dark. He abused his wife, abused the kids, would even beat them, to the point where when he started to sell the story on his own without the lawyer, he was like, the kids were on point. You saw a ghost in your bedroom. You saw pig eyes looking through the window. You know, all the stuff that started as little creepy stories that built into the Amity horror was really started by this man. I can't think of his name right now. It bums me out. But he turned out to be just as sociopathic of a person as a personality, a narcissist and a wife beater, and to the point where he even went and got himself an exorcism. And then the story was so interesting to me because it got all the way to the point to where parapsychologists and Dave and Lorraine Warren came into this house and bought this whole story of demon possession and darkness possession. And parapsychologists researched it back 100 years earlier, where this house was buried on a shaman's native Indian burial ground, which is where the whole trope for Native American burial grounds causing hell in horror movies came from. It was the first time in Hollywood that was used. That went on to become a very cliche trope for horror movies. But what I found most interesting is all this darkness and all this craziness, and this man putting his children through hell, and the family that lived before him being mafioso tied, and those children were abused, and the cycle has repeated itself for the next family that moved in. And those kids were messed up by their father, and how he milked the house for its story. But then they got into people that were psychologists who actually asked the question, these people that are sociopaths, or not even sociopaths, but psychopaths, the killer me personality, the hey Tyson, you're my best friend until I don't need you anymore, and then you will die, and I will pretend that I care about you until that day type of personality. Does that personality, is that just a human personality type that happens from abuse or happens from humanity? Or is there darkness for real? Is there dark forces that can act upon humans? Can the past, and can people of the past and events from the past affect the now? Is the past, and especially like horrible events like murdering your children and your father and mother, stick in the walls, in the dirt, in the rocks, in the trees around that area? And can it repeat? Does it have something to do with this sociopathic personality? And so that immediately, because I was working on the Knights Templar and working on Kathleen Ball as well today, I went, that's an interesting topic, but the only place it leads me to is religion, because what causes this behavior in human beings? Is there such thing as darkness? I came to the conclusion at the end of thinking about all this, was that the answer is yes. Everything affects everything. I think that's what we do on this show, right? We look at people and we have them bring their ideas of their realities and their what's it called when you're a specialist? Their specialties.
That works. Yeah. That's the word I'd use.
To the show, and I find it all fascinating. Do aliens exist? Does God exist? Do dark forces exist? Is it all just mankind? Blah 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 blah. And we can go on.
Yes, and yes.
And that there is no real black and white answer to why anything is. I think it's all. Yeah, I think the answer is always yes.
But there's also a modicum of perhaps insanity, right? People's brains sometimes are messed up that don't necessarily need evil influence. I mean, yes, I do. I'm a God-fearing man. I believe in good and evil and spirits and demons and angels. But I'm saying it may not always be that. It could be a person is just a little crazy. I mean, sometimes crazy is crazy, right?
Yeah. And to that, I would say the answer is yes, that causation is probably caused by everything that we can think of under the sun and more. So I find that all very fascinating. And then I started to think about the Knights Templar, and I went like, wow, these guys guarded a 900-year secret about Christianity that people have been researching all like crazy. There's so many books and so many movies about the Templar Knights, but we actually have someone here tonight that might have some of those answers, having done all the research herself, Dr. Kathleen Ball. Is there anything else that happened this week, Tyson, that you want to talk about?
Triple digit temperatures.
Yeah.
It was
right there.
Yeah, Ham Radio's field day was this weekend. I was very fortunate that I got to sit in an air-conditioned motorhome for most of that radio stuff while everybody else was outside under the tents dying in heat. Like I just couldn't do that. So that was my big thing, is the heat and the AR field day. I will ask you, Manu, to ask our guest a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold this up. This is a debit card, which is linked to my bank. What does banking and the Knights Templar have in common?
Yeah,
she'll tell us.
That is a good
she'll
question.
Tell us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get to her very soon. I just want to say one other thing that I found very strange about this whole Amityville thing. So this cycle led to 75, 76, where two movies come out, The Godfather and The Exorcist. And I'm like, so art, these horrible things happening, and then art starts to tell stories about these horrible things. And then what was so fascinating was that the art of the Amityville horror and all the things that previous generations saw, that they had the actual kids interviewed in this documentary. And they were like, as I got older, people would come to me and say, what happened in that house when you were a kid? And I would tell them, and then people would say, bullshit, that's not what happened. I saw the movie. You're a liar. And it's funny how art, the story of, movies can take over the real reality that probably just started with a few flies on a dead girl's body and then turned into evil swarm of flies coming in the window to the priest that was never there, and then people believe that instead of, the tragedy of what actually occurred there. Anyway, the cool thing about Amityville also is it's 2024. New families have lived there for like decades, and no weird shit has happened.
Do you want to plug our friend David Oman, since we're talking about this?
Yeah, since we're talking about haunted houses, go check out David Oman's movie. He was at go just check out David Oman and everything he's about. He's wonderfully interesting. We'll have David Oman on again. But let's talk about the Templars. If there's nothing else besides hot temperatures and crazy demon psycho killers, let's get into the Templars. Let's bring on Dr. Kathleen Ball. Welcome to the show. How are you? Thanks for coming on.
Hi, everyone.
I'm Dr. Kathleen Ball, and I have been researching the Knights Templar for, about 30 years now. I inadvertently sort of kind of fell into research about them as a result of a NDE that I had, a near-death experience that I had in 1990. I was an art professor. I was an artist, art professor, professional artist, and I had studied Leonardo da Vinci in depth. I had really done a great deal of research on Leonardo da Vinci. And then I found out that he was also involved in these esoteric belief systems, secret societies, and Prole de Sion, etc. That led me right directly into the Knights Templar, which I realized that the Templars were also around during the beginning when the Medici family in Italy, when those families were starting to get very powerful. They were banking families. Anyway, so it stands to reason that Leonardo would have been involved or had direct knowledge about the Templars. And of course, there's the story about the Turin shroud that supposed to be the image of Christ, that now they're saying that the actual material dates back to Jerusalem. It does date back to the 1st century. However, the images, they believe that Leonardo may have created them.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, everything keeps leading me back to the Templars. And so that's what happened, and then, of course, Dan Brown's book came out, and that really just blew the doors off of, esoteric belief systems, secret societies. And then when the film came out, I happened to have been in Rome when that film came out in 2006. And the Vatican had a fit about that film.
I bet they did. I bet they did.
Dan Brown. Yeah, they tried to keep that film from ever being shown to the public. They wanted to keep that under wraps. And so I was there during that when that happened. And so all I could think about was, wow, there must
Why does the Vatican care so much?
There's got to be something to this. Why are they trying to, shut everybody up and shut Dan Brown up? And so that got me even more interested, of course, in the Templars. And, and then that led me to what was the purpose? What was their purpose? Well, these 9 knights supposedly, originated.
So let's start there. Let's go back. Let's rewind just a little bit. And let's start with, how did the Knights, just give a brief history for people that don't know much about the Knights Templar, just a sort of like 1st grade class. When did they start?
Okay, well, the Knights, from what I can see, the Knights Templar that we know of were originated with Bernard de Clairvaux, who was a Cistercian monk who was trying to replace the corruption in the Catholic Church. And so he introduced the Cistercian order. He also introduced the Knights Templar to the Catholic Church as a sort of a mercenary group to go and fight in the Holy Land. But they had already been in existence at that point for close to 70 years. They began their organization and organizing in Greece, and sometime before 1090. And I've got dates, everything from 1040 to 1060, that they were actually organizing at that point, that they were coming together. And I know they were in Constantinople in 1090. There's a great deal of evidence of the Templars' presence in Turkey. I found them in Derinkuyu in Cappadocia. I found them in Istanbul, and now I'm finding there's another site that I'm going to be seeing, that I'm going to be visiting in September. They found a Templar stele that's sticking out of what they call a tepe. If you're familiar with Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. Well,
I am.
There's a new one that's been discovered, and it's got a stele with Knights Templar insignias all over.
Wow.
So I'm going to be going back to research that and find out. And I also know that there were a couple of Templar castles there. So this preceded the Crusades in the Holy Land. All of this history preceded. And from my research, as my
When
house,
did they become involved with the Catholic Church?
they
When did
got
they
involved
become
with Catholic
the
Church in
mercenaries?
1118, and then they
Okay.
became, the stamp of approval, and I think it was 1127, with the help of Bernard de Clairvaux, with the Cistercian, order.
Okay.
And they were introduced specifically to defend the Holy Land and try to take the Holy Land back, right, from the Muslims at that
This
point.
is when the Crusades and such started,
Yeah.
900 years of the Knights Templar
Right.
history. Okay.
But there wasn't just one order of knights that went over there. There were a number of different orders that were over there. And when they originated, there was supposedly only 9 knights. Now, we have records of only 9 knights. I'm sorry, but 9 knights cannot protect pilgrims going from Europe into the Holy Land. That's just not reality. It just doesn't hold water, right?
And one of the things that I learned from the Knights Templar was one of the reasons, in addition to this, that they were founded was also like a Christian police force almost. There were pilgrimages that happened across Europe, and people would be robbed, right? People would be robbed of money. And so the Knights Templar was also created to protect these pilgrims that would go back and forth. Again, when I was telling Mono, it's a little bit about how the bank system began, right?
I'll get into that because that's really important. And there's a big difference in what was going on with that financial system that they designed, that they created, and what we have today. And number one was usury. They didn't charge usury. So that was a huge difference. But anyway, that's
for the dumb guys like me. What do you mean by that?
Corrupted their banking system. You know what I mean? We even went so far as to do that. But
usury meaning what? I don't know I don't exactly.
Meaning it was free. It was free. There was no bank fees. There was no.
So you could join the Vatican Templar Bank and
they deposited their money in a bank in Europe, wherever, in England or Scotland.
No ATM fees from the Templars. None of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then they took a note with them into Jerusalem, and they connected with the Templars over there, and they were given however much they needed at that time. So it was a banking system that was, it was very beneficial. It was a win-win for the Templars and for them, because they amassed these huge fortunes. A lot of the pilgrims didn't come back, so they ended up with the money. It was a win-win. It was a win-win, and there was no usury being charged at the time. And I have some of those I have about 40 of the original Templar coins that were used,
cool.
Going back to the 13th century.
Do you have any of the notes? Do you have any of the notes?
Any of the what?
The notes.
Oh,
the notes.
No, I don't have the notes. Oh. I think they were probably written on, who knows, papyrus
or
they might have been written on animal skins. Who knows what they were? But I have never seen those notes myself. I would love to. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from 9 guys, the church probably convinces the 9 to make this an army and give them the money to do so, and they start having more and more Templars join.
Right. Well, that's what happened. It became a really attractive thing for people, especially, you got to remember the system in Europe. The oldest son inherited everything. The second son typically went into the clergy. Okay, well, this gave the second son a chance to amass some type of, some more money or whatever, some fame at least, by joining the Templars and going into the Holy Land and fighting in the Crusades. So this system was being used by a lot, and they attracted thousands and thousands and thousands of members in a very short time. And but the original, what I want to get back to though, is the original knights. The original 9 knights went straight to the Temple Mount. They did not stay in the castle. They stayed in the stables above the Temple Mount. And we have now found evidence that they were excavating underneath the Temple Mount in the tunnels. So whatever they found in there, which I suspect, some of the contents were Phoenician maps and genealogies and a lot more valuable things than gold and silver and, you know, that sort of stuff. Artifacts, menorahs, things like that would have been hidden during the time that they demolished the Second Temple. So they came back with these, you know, these records, and immediately in Portugal, they started a naval base in Peniche, which nobody knows about. I've just come back from Portugal on my third or fourth trip anyway, and I found the commandery where the Templars had their stronghold that nobody knows about, nobody talks about. But there were 2 commanderies and several convents where they were training the Templars, and this goes all the way back to 1190. And they had churches all throughout the area. The Cistercians had, you know, their monasteries throughout that area. And every single one of the admirals in the Portuguese Navy all lived in Peniche for several hundred years. So it looks
Several of these people were Templar Knights, I'm guessing.
Many of them were.
Yeah,
okay. I'm certain that many of them were.
When they were underground at the Temple Mound, do you think they absconded with the Ark of the Covenant?
I believe they did. Yeah, I believe they did. We have absolutely no evidence of that because there are no remaining records. There's no surviving records. They either didn't keep those records or they were destroyed, possibly because they didn't want anybody to get their hands on them. Who knows? But you know, from 1307,
or the Vatican has been hiding them forever, and they still have.
The Vatican wanted to completely eradicate them. They wanted to get rid of the Templars completely, and they went to great lengths to do that. All the way up through the 16th century, they went into South America and they were hunting down Templar descendants and Masons also, and murdering whole families. I found evidence in a book in the Rosicrucian Library about this.
Who was the Pope that suddenly went, oh, instead of being our great protectors for 900 years, that decided to turn on these guys? How did that happen?
When the church discovered what the Templars were doing in Portugal, they were really not very happy about that, because they were taking in the Cathars, they were taking in the Jews, they were taking in all these people, Druids, Muslim, you know, Moors. They were taking in all these people that the church considered heretics. And they were not only giving them safety, but they were giving them land.
They were being Christ-like and Christian at the same time.
Very definitely.
Well, I want to say, King Philip had a hand in it too,
Yeah.
though, right?
But the
King
Templars
Philip had a
needed
hand in it.
The original teachings of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, not what we have that's come down the pike through the Catholic Church and, you know, through a lot of
do you put any
writings.
do you put any weight into the so-called Dan Brown theory that these Templars did know the bloodline of Christ, and that Christ did have kids and got married and maybe wasn't crucified, or I don't know?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And
why?
The reason I do, there's a couple reasons why I do, but I was approached by a man in 2009. My husband and I were over in France for a month, and we ended up, I had to go into Dome, France to fire the person that set up our itinerary because it was a disaster. Anyway, so the only place that they had an internet cafe was in Dome, France, which was by our little Laverie where we were staying. So I had to go into Dome, France, and I found out that there was a grotto there that you could go underground and see some pictographs and whatnot. And I wasn't too impressed. So I'm coming up from this grotto with my husband, and this man approaches me from the museum, and he comes up to me and he says, "Do you know about the Templars?" And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." And he said, "Would you like to see where they were held while they were awaiting their death?" It was right here in Dome. There's a dungeon right over here. Anyway, wow. He hands me the keys to the dungeon, and he says, "It's right over here," and helps me open it up. And he said, "Just bring the keys back when you're done." Okay, so I go in there. I photographed everything, all the graffiti, everything. Picked up on the energy. As a result of my near death, I'm very sensitive to energy now. So anyway, I picked up on all that. I come back about an hour later. I hand this guy the keys, and he looks me straight in the eye and he says, "Do you know what the Templars were protecting?" And I said, "Well, I have a pretty good idea, but what do you think? What's your take on it?" And he said, "The bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene." And I went, "Yeah, well, I'm still on the fence," because at that point in time, this is 2009, I was still on the fence. I was still waiting for more evidence. I wanted some evidence. I wanted something that convinced me. Anyway, I found that. Just recently, actually, I found some pretty solid evidence, but on a church in Portugal. So
Tell us about it.
yeah, I'll tell you about that in just a minute.
Okay.
So anyway, so here we are, 2009, and we end up going into Marseille, looking for some family records, for my husband was French. It turned out so was I, partially, but I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, and so I'm attracted to this cathedral, this huge cathedral, and I'm just drawn to it, and I don't really know why. And as I approach, this nun opens up the door, and she takes one look at me, and she says, "I've been waiting for you, madame. I've been waiting since college. I learned English in college, so when you came, I could speak with you." And she's hugging me, and she's crying, and it's just, and my husband's going, "What's going on here?" I've had a lot of strange things happen since my near-death experience. That's just one very.
Me too. I've told my near-death experience so many times on the show that people probably know it, but we've had very similar experiences.
Very, very bizarre things have happened to me. So I take it sort of like, it's like, okay, it's just normal. My husband was a little shocked by it. But anyway, she takes me off into her studio. She draws me a map, and she sends me up there, and she says, "I want you to do whatever you're instructed to do when you get there." And I said, "Okay." She says, "You must promise me, madame, promise me that you will go." And so I promised her, and she hugged me goodbye. And, and I have pictures of she and I, she's hugging me goodbye. Anyway, so we can't find it the first try. I couldn't find it. So we went on in with our vacation, and it just kept eating at me. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had this dream about this little cottage. And I told my husband, I said, "We got to go back to St. Bone. We have to go back." And so we did. And we got back there, and there's that little hut at the top, that little hut that I had seen in my dream. Anyway, so we get up there, and I have this whole spiritual experience. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but it was basically a clearing of energy. And it turned out that this site, this grotto, was where Mary Magdalene had lived for the last 17 years of her life in intercessory prayer. And it had been taken over by the Catholic Church. And all I can tell you, it was just filled with all this dark energy. And so I basically did this meditation and freed all that dark energy. And what came in was a lot of light filled the space.
She was there for 17 years. And where this was in France?
Yes, she was in. Well,
was she held prisoner, or was she living in what's a grotto?
She was not a prisoner. This was of her own accord. This is as she was getting older. She just retreated into St. Bone, and she was there for the last years of her life in intercessory prayer.
What's that mean? Intercessory.
Intercessory prayer is like interdimensional. I guess that's the best. That's a good synonym for it. It is interdimensional. Okay. You're here in the physical plane, but you're connected to another dimensional reality, which you can relate to as after having a near-death experience. Oh, yeah. I know I'm in multiple
realities and
I mean
multiple lifetimes. That's my theory, at least. Same thing happened to you. I had a light being. It opened the great storybook of my soul. I saw all the different options that I could pick. Right. I could die now. I felt this immense feeling of love where it was like, you can die, my soul or God, whatever it was, light being. I don't really care. It was beautiful. Right. It loved me. But I got that same message that you got when I was reading your biography of you can die now. No problem. I love you, but you're going to have to come back and do this again. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to do this again. Maybe I'll stay alive and pick one of these other multiple choices.
That was exactly what my rationale was. As I was, it was conveyed to me telepathically that if I if I went ahead and stayed there, I would have to repeat a similar lifetime at least.
Yeah.
And I said, no.
Choice, any one of these other choices is,
Yeah. So I decided to come back and, participate in what's happening on this planet right now, this higher consciousness. So anyway, so given that experience with Mary Magdalene, I became really sensitive to her energy. And this was in 2009. And so I began to really study, Mary Magdalene and Jesus and the children, and get as much information as I could, which there's really not much. There really isn't much. There's a lot of rumors. There's churches built and temples built to the Black Madonna all through France, all over France and Spain and Italy. But there really isn't anything written down. There's no written evidence whatsoever. So it's very difficult.
Probably because the Vatican has tried to destroy most of anything to do with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but I did find out that all of the kings in France, this is what I was told by one of the people, at the monastery where I stayed in Saint Baume. He said that typically when a new king was crowned, they would make a pilgrimage up to Saint Baume to have their marriage blessed by Mary Magdalene for fertility. So all the kings did this. Every single one of the kings went up there for this particular process that they went through to have their marriage blessed with children. So
around what we would call 0,
yeah,
8, whatever. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Or it was 01 AD or whenever.
So
okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so here I have all this information, and I'm reading, even more about the Templars. And fast forward to 2015, I get not a phone call, but actually I get a message through Messenger of my girlfriend of mine that I had met in Bosnia. She was in Brazil, and she was going to go and stay with John of God in Abadiânia. We won't get into all of that. But anyway, she invited me. I had a liver disease. We had been suffering from liver cancer for 4 years at that point in my life. And I was waiting for a liver transplant, but I didn't want to do that because I was worried about the anti-rejection meds. So I don't handle medications well. So anyway, so I said, okay, what the heck, I'll go. So I met her in Uruguay. We did a little bit there, and then we went in and met in Brasilia. And everything that happened from then on was just synchronistic. But if you would have looked at it from not knowing what was eventually going to happen, you would have thought it was just utter chaos. She rented the car because I forgot my driver's license. I never forget my driver's license. I forgot my driver's license. She didn't know how to drive a car with a clutch. And that's what they gave us, was a car with a clutch. So we get about not even 2 hours outside of Brasilia, she burns up the first clutch. And then she burns up a second clutch, and which causes us to be really, really late to get into our hotel in Cavalcanche, right? So we have to cancel our reservation in Cavalcanche because they finally come up with the third car, and this is finally an automatic. Okay, so we're looking around in the area. What's the closest town at this point? Because it's dark. And we see, she says, Molino, Alto Paraiso. Well, she said Alto Paraiso. And I said, well, what does that mean? High something, high paradise. I said, let's go there. Okay, so this was just spur of the moment decision because it's dark, right? Okay, we go into it turns out it's Alto Paraiso. So we go in, we get a pousada, which is a hotel. The next morning we get up. I hook up with the only English-speaking person in town in front of the health food store. And next thing I know, we're getting directions on how to go to this waterfall, which is what we went up there for. John of God was busy for a few days, so we decided to take a road trip up into this area. It's where there's just tons of waterfalls. Anyway, long story short, I ran into this person. She gives me the directions to Agua Fria. Adele and I get ready. We go down to Agua Fria. It's amazing. It's just absolutely pristine, beautiful waterfall. We come up, and the owner of the camping pousada, which is there, the camping hotel, motel, whatever, he invites us to lunch. And so I said, okay, sure. So we're having lunch. And he says, well, how would you guys like to go over next to this land next to me, adjacent to my property, and go see this crystal vein that runs through the property? It's about 1 meter high by 1 meter wide, and it runs 2.5 to 3 kilometers through the middle of this property. And there's a whole bunch of loose crystals, Brazilian crystals laying all over, and you can take some if you want. And we said, who's going to say no to crystals, right?
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody I know. Anyway,
Mono
so
wouldn't.
we get over there. We meet up with this young guide who turns out he's the caretaker for the property. And he takes us down to this, I'm down, straight down this side of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. I'm 800 hectares, which is about 2,400 acres of nothing, wilderness, straight down the mountainside. And
This is in Brazil?
If we find the crystal vein, we found it.
Okay.
And we gathered a bunch of crystals. We got them in our backpack, and it's really hot. So he says, well, do you want to go into this little cave? It's just about another kilometer or so down the hill. And we thought, no, not really. He says, well, we can stop, have water, rest for a while. It's cool in the cave.
It's cool in the cave.
And we said, okay, sure, that sounds great. Another 1.5 kilometers, we get down, further down the mountain. He lifts up the bushes to the entrance of this cave. And I kid you not, I was in shock. And I just looked at the top of the cave and I went, what is a Knights Templar cross doing in the middle of Brazil on this cave? And he rattles off a bunch of stuff in broken Portuguese, and none of it made any sense. I actually videotaped it and had it translated later. And basically what he told me at that time was that the old women, the indigenous women in the area, used that cave for magic, which had nothing to do with the Templars, right? Nothing. So I photographed everything. I actually went inside this cave with no light. It's dark, right? It's really dark. And I went deeper into it than just the mouth, because I want to see what's going on. And I've got my phone on video, and I'm videoing. All of a sudden I start feeling these things all over my legs. There was spiders. There was thousands of spiders in this cave. And there were hundreds of bats, and I got bats flying all over me, and I've got these spiders. And so I get out of there as fast as I can, and I'm screaming. Anyway, and it's like, ah. So I get out.
This is the Templar made cave. The Templars made this cave. Yeah.
So
they could build these guys.
I said, Adele, I'm coming back. I got to come back here. This is just unbelievable, right? I can't even believe this is real, Anyway, so that's 2015. We go to see John of God and Abadianya. That was pretty much a wash. Anyway, I go home. I fly home. And 9 days later, my house burns to the ground. 9 days later, my whole world gets shifted. My house burns to the ground with all my curriculum, all my artwork, everything from my career that I have had and used for 35 years is gone. Boom, gone in a blink of an eye. So then 6 weeks after that, I have a liver transplant, because obviously what John of God, nothing happened there. So I had to have a liver transplant. The cancer had changed. It wasn't just these benign little tumors, and not benign, but these that they call encapsulated tumors. I had 2 very aggressive tumors that had developed. So my doctor says, okay, you're going to we got to take your liver. And I said, okay, let's do it. So I had a liver transplant. I had a whole year to decide what I was going to do with my life. I couldn't really go back to the college because as a result of the anti-rejection meds that I was worried about, I lost 90% of my hearing due to nerve damage. So I now wear a cochlear implant. Okay, so I couldn't go back to the college. I had to take a disability early retirement from the college. And I decided that this discovery was important enough that I wanted to do a documentary about it and get it out to the world. And I wanted to talk to Templars in Europe about it. And I wanted them to know. And I wanted to find out. I just became obsessed basically with this discovery. And
so have archaeologists and other people come to this cave and studied it over the last 9 years?
Yeah, I haven't been able to get any archaeologists over there yet, but I have made contact with one in Brazil who's willing to meet me. And it's through another researcher, historian over there that I know. And he's willing to meet me the next time I go over there. So we will have that. But the Templars in Europe have corroborated that it is definitely a Templar site. And it is definitely a Templar cross. And the graffiti that's in the cave is definitely Templar initiation symbols.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Okay. So can I show your trailer now? Okay.
This is phenomenal.
Because this is leading to this.
My last trip to Portugal was in February. And what I discovered over there just absolutely sealed the deal. I went to a church in a little town called Atuia, which is just next to Peniche, because I was there. I was in Peniche looking for the commanderies. I was looking for evidence of the commanderies. And my friend over there says, hey, let's go to this church, San Leonardo Church, because I found this graffiti on the altar that you might be interested in. He showed me one of the photos and I went, oh my God. I said, that's exactly like the graffiti in my cave. Okay, so I'm dying to get into this church. So we make an appointment. I get into the church and my photographer's all set up. We're all ready to go. And in walks a guy and he walks straight up to me. He says, you can't photograph in here. And I said, on whose authority? And he said, well, I am really good friends with the patrimony that controls, that is, administrates this church, the administration for this church. And I said, so what's the reason? What's the reason for this? And he said, well, the church doesn't want anybody photographing the interior of the church because they don't want thieves and burglars to see the gold and blah. I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in, this graffiti that's on the altar and some of the iconography that's in this church. He says, well, I can't let you do that. And I said, why? I said, what's the reason? I need a reason.
Nobody's going to steal the graffiti, right?
Mm-hmm. And so he said, it's just graffiti, right? Mm-hmm. So he says to me, well, that graffiti doesn't mean anything. That was left by sailors in the 13th century to be blessed on their travels. And I said, well, then you want to explain to me why I find these exact same symbols in my cave in Brazil that's 2,000 kilometers from any ocean? Right? He couldn't answer that. So anyway, finally I beat him down enough to where he agreed to try to get permission. And I didn't realize who I was talking to until we actually did a background check on the guy. My friend's wife was a lawyer. We did a background check. We found out that he was Opus Dei.
Which is Vatican shut up the Templar organization?
Or the Catholic Church. Yeah. And not only was he Opus Dei, but he was the advisor to the King of Portugal on religious studies and religious.
Oh, wow.
Up there with the Illuminati, right?
So I walked into a hornet's nest basically with this guy, and I had an appointment to see this well that's shaped like a key that I suspected went from one commandery to the other. And I wanted to walk the tunnel underneath. The following day, he put a stop to that one too. So anyway, but I ended up getting the photos I wanted anyway. So,
how long has Opus Dei been around? And are they a group of priests from the Roman Catholic Church? We don't know.
Hundreds of years. They're the fixers, like the mafia has their fixers. Well, the
Vatican's got the Opus Dei fixers.
They are their fixers. So,
and to this day, this secret that the Templars were keeping, that may be about the bloodline, maybe about more than that. terrifies. It must terrify the Vatican, right?
Right.
I mean,
Well,
the idea that Jesus could have had children is
well, apparently this guy didn't know that the church itself was an entire narrative. If you walked outside the church, there were scenes in an altar of a woman and a man with two children with the fleur de lis that surrounded the whole altar.
I love that symbol.
It's a narrative for Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene and their children. The fleur de lis was symbolized the bloodline. So this,
I always thought it was the Boy Scouts, but yeah.
so this, I get every time I'd even talk about this, I get chills because my hair stands up, because this is an actual physical proof,
physical landmark that tells the story.
Yeah.
Where's this church at?
This church is just outside of Peniche, and I'm actually doing a tour to Portugal in October, and I'm taking people there to see it. And it's going to be in my next book, and then it's also going to be in my third film. We're working on the second film right now to get that out, and this will all the footage will be in the third film. So
okay, so by the way, listeners, Dr. Kathleen Ball, her new book is called A Grail Quest: Discovery of the Mysterious Knights Templar Cave in Brazil, and a documentary that goes with it. The Brazilian Templars Mystery illuminates uncharted chapters of chapters of Knights Templar history. It challenges traditional narratives and inspires a new wave of historical research. I want to show people the trailer to your documentary on this cave and your discoveries there. I will say roll it in a second, but I do I had something else on my mind and I just lost it. So let's roll her this is what I found fascinating. Before we show you trailer, I knew I was going to interview you today, and my dad is hugely into the Templar Knights and their history and the secrets they were keeping. He's really into this saint named Saint Elizabeth, and that she also supposedly did miracles and stuff. And that's how he ran into the Templar Knights. But what I found so interesting when I went on TV, right, and this supposedly conglomerate of information that we can look up about the Templar Knights, I couldn't find anything in my library of Templar, supposedly, all the stuff that's ever been made on these guys. I couldn't find anything free, like nothing. I couldn't find any documentaries that I didn't have to pay for. And I went, okay, if there's no information on all my cable channels, all my apps that I don't have to pay for, that must be like a conspiracy in its own. The fact that they're just not letting people get this information at all, unless you're willing to pay for it. Now, I do want people to buy your documentary. They can see it on Gaia. They can, I think, rent it on Amazon. Right. But definitely check this out if you can afford the $6, or you could just get that free Gaia watch-a-thon, and you could binge Templar stuff and all other beautiful stuff on Gaia, and then cancel it in a week and you can get your money back. And
I want to let you know too, that I'm in the process right now of negotiating with another intermediary, and we're uploading the film because Gaia no longer has the licensing rights. I have that back.
Cool.
So I've negotiated a deal with another film company that is going to be marketing it. So it's going to be out on Netflix. It'll be out on Amazon Prime, some other things. So it won't be exclusively on Gaia anymore.
Yeah, and I wasn't just throwing that free thing at you. I'm sure I want people to buy your book and read about the Templars and see your film. But I found that really interesting that it was like, yeah, something is keeping this information hidden from people. So check out the documentary for her new film, A Grail Quest: Discovering it'll say the name in the trailer. Watch the trailer, everybody.
The Templars in Brazil. This is the story of Dr. Kathleen Ball, researcher, traveler, and explorer of ancient sites, and her discovery of a cave. A cave hidden in a remote area on the outskirts of a small Brazilian town.
With the blessing of King Guinness, I believe that they left Portugal to Brazil and colonized the area in Alto Paraiso, which is where I found the cave.
A cave that was carved by the Knights Templar.
I would say quite clearly that they would have gone as far as Brazil. At that time would have been the extent of the New World to carve out a new place where they could literally recreate what they had already established.
We will explore how this adventure began and the little-known history of the Templars' travels to Brazil.
Wow, cool. So 900 years of serving the Catholic Church in a capacity to protect their secrets, and then to suddenly being who was the Pope? And you said King Philip of what?
King Philip III was the king at the time in France. And what was going on in Europe was really important. The monarchs were all broke. They had no money. And not only that, but King Philip III was very deep in debt to the Templars. His father had left him with this huge debt. And so was the Vatican, by the way. The Vatican was in debt to the Templars, equivalent today to billions of dollars. I mean, they really were in trouble financially. So King Philip III, his answer to that was, okay, we'll get rid of these Jews. We'll take everything they have. And then that wasn't enough. So he apparently made some kind of request to the Templars to become a Templar himself, and he was denied. So he's not happy about that. And to make a long story short, he started this whole program of propaganda, just like we do today, to make the Templars look bad. There was no reason for them anymore to be even existing, because they were no longer fighting the holy wars for the kings, because there was no holy wars happening. They lost Acre. They had lost Acre in 1292. So, here we are, 1307. This is quite a few years later. And they were a threat to the Catholic Church because of the power they had amassed.
They were the bank, right?
Tons of
to go to Tyson's question.
Yeah, they owned tons of property. They had control of the banking system in Europe, all of Europe. All of the monarchies borrowed and, back and forth from the Templars. And also they had a tremendous amount of power. They didn't pay any tithes to the Catholic Church. They were the only organization that did not. And then to top it all off, when the Pope got into looking into Portugal a little bit more, found out what they were created in Portugal, which was a sovereign nation that was accepting of the Cathars, the Jews, the Druids, the Moors, the Christians, everybody that they had considered heretics. So here they were in direct opposition to the will of the Catholic Church. And so, the writing was on the wall at that point. And the only reason why the king in Portugal had any money, which I'll let you know what my cave was, is they were bringing gold and silver back and forth from South America. My cave is a gold mine. And so,
or a storage facility, or both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful, just the little couple pictures I saw in the documentary. Those guys could build. So this is my final question, and I can't believe an hour has passed already, but that sucks, because I'm really just starting to get interested in the conversation. What is the connection to Freemasonry, and why are the Knights Templar and Freemasonry so intertwined?
Well, many Masons are Templars, and many Templars are also Masons. They derived, I think the Masons derived out of the ideals that the Templars had established. Although they are a completely separate order, the Templars, I have discovered, have continued on and never ceased, as we've been told in history. They continued a direct line all the way back from 1300s to today. We have many Templars that exist today that are popping up now. They're coming above board again. The Templars have reunited globally. I was there at that initiation, at that ceremony in Tomar in 2019 when they all signed a pact and reunited as a global organization. So, they're free now to state their purpose, to do, what they had originally intended to do. And I believe what that intention is to create a sovereign world of these same principles: equality, tolerance, a banking system that is not based on usury, all these principles that how they created Portugal. And during the time that they were in Portugal, they had this nautical school there, and the Portuguese were the first boat builders in Europe, that we know of. Anyway, I found evidence of the Templars now in India, in Turkey, in all through Africa, Ethiopia, and all through South America. Now, I'm also being told by friends that they found Templar crosses in Australia. So what I think was going on is many of the Templars were of the bloodline themselves. And I think that they were going to these countries, intermingling with the local people there, the local women there, and establishing this bloodline globally. And I think now I've been told that this bloodline consists of several 100 million people today.
Wow. So you think some of the secrets of the Knights Templars have sort of stayed within the Freemasonry circles?
I don't think that the Freemasons were privy to much of it, if any, honestly. I think that the Templars, they were in control of those secrets and that information. Timothy Hogan, if you get a chance, to have him on your show, he's the Grand Master right now, and he has been divulging some things that have been secret for hundreds and hundreds of years.
What's his name?
Timothy Hogan.
And he's the Grand Master of the Knights Templar?
Of the Knights Templar.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that they actually still exist.
He is opening these things up, and I've had several conversations with him because my research, he's been able to corroborate a lot of my research that I was not able to find evidence for. And so that was huge for me. That was really, it was nice.
So if Timothy Hogan is in charge, if Timothy Hogan is in charge, then aren't all the people under him Hogan's heroes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what do you, so when
seen as a hero to a lot of people, because he is opening up these secrets to the world. I mean, he's talking about these things that have been kept secret. He thinks it's time now that we are going through a shift in consciousness, and we are having a real transfiguration that's taking place on this planet. And, for all intents and purposes, you flip on the news and you're not going to think that's what's going on because it's chaos, obviously. But under the rug, the things that they're not reporting about, are huge. There is huge differences and changes in the mindset of the people. To have a conversation with somebody about an NDE 20 years ago was unheard of. Now everybody's talking about it. To have these conversations about the Knights Templar, nobody wanted to hear it from me back then. Nobody cared. This is all my own private research because nobody cared. Nobody really cared. It wasn't until Dan Brown busted that door wide open, and Holy Blood, Holy Grail came out, and, all these other things. But, even then, it was an uphill battle. It was not in everybody's mind. They weren't talking.
The Da Vinci Code made it really popular, too. The Da Vinci Code brought a lot of light to that.
That's what we were talking about, Dan Brown.
Today, it is. Today, these things are being talked about. People talking about teleportation. Look at the scientific discoveries that we have come up with recently, proving, that we're all connected. And, there's just a tremendous amount that has been revealed in the last 20, 30 years since my near-death experience that I was waiting to see happen. I knew it was going to happen because I could see it in my near-death, but I didn't realize it was going to happen so quickly. It really happened quickly. in terms of the development of history, is really usually very incremental and very slow. Well, this is happening really rapidly. So I'm happy to see that.
I hope you're right, because I look around and I still see lots of secrecy and lots of deep state secrecy and military secrecy and technologies being suppressed and all sorts of craziness going on. I hope that disclosure and in spiritual and in all sorts of ways that the human mind or the human amoeba gets more positive light going on in it. So we have a few questions for you. I've been losing callers the whole time I've been holding them. So let's bring on a couple of questions for Dr. Kathleen Ball.
Okay.
Maji, glowing feather. What's up, man? Thanks for hanging
Hello,
out.
beautiful beings of light.
How are you, man?
Oh, hey, listen, goddess. I listen to every word, and it's not absurd. It is heard. Here's my discoveries. I'm 75, right? I was 20 years old in 1969 at Woodstock. But when I was 17 in 1966, I was off the coast of Vietnam on an aircraft carrier watching planes bomb Buddhists. That was wrong. But when I found the heart song of Woodstock and I learned about the bubble of peace, love, and light, those were the Templars. I believe the Templars are us, that we are the new foundation, that, and why I choose the rainbow is a symbol that his father, Manu's father, and I met in 72 in Colorado on a plateau, and the white buffalo was above, and it was the rainbow vision of the ancestors coming back. And I tell you, the Templars, I feel their spirit. They went all the way down to Brazil. And I'm 75 in 2 years on my farm, 50 acres of beautiful land that my legacy. I'm going to your place. I want to go to that place. It would be my.
I want to see that church too. Where are you?
Let's go together. Let's go together on my 77th birthday. 26, 2 years away.
Okay.
And where the church again? Where is it?
You need to be prepared for quite a hike. It's about a 6.5 to 7 kilometer hike down.
That's to the cave.
Can you rent a donkey or a horse?
I'm sure you. Why not?
Can you? I mean, can you rent a donkey or a horse? Usually they have people that will let you use their horse. I know how to ride horses. I've had 3. A donkey.
We don't have that luxury in Brazil, unfortunately. It's just a guide that, that is there, that is a caretaker for the property, and he gives me permission to get into to see it.
Right.
Maji, if you can make the hike into the Rainbow Gathering this year, you can make the hike down to the Templar Cave with us.
Yeah, I have the spirit. But listen, I'm telling you, goddess, I understand all these words you said. I listen to every word. My heart opens. It's amazing that we live in this great universe that begins with you. In the first 3 letters is you and I verse. We're in the universe begins with you, within you, and all around you. I really love all these years of study that you have done. He mentioned this thing, rainbow. When I go there, right now, I got hit by a car a year ago. My body hurts, but when I'm doing this, I'm able to feel the energy, and this is why I connect what you were talking about, the Templars. They didn't want to do the church. They didn't want to do the power, but they did the thing about helping people by loaning them money and expecting a good return. But then, the church. And I'm glad they don't know about me, because they'll be after me.
I think you were probably a Knights Templar in a past life or a future life, or the millions of lives that our souls are maybe living at one time. You're back there, like I can see Maji swinging his sword.
Okay.
And
listen, one thing I want, goddess, please give me a subject. Not what you were talking about, but in your heart, something you contemplate a lot about. that you think about, and I'll give you a heart song. This will be a spontaneous combustion of words. But give me something that you like to contemplate, think about.
What I contemplate often is, when are we going to see this flip? When are we going to see evidence of this flip that's happening, this transfiguration? When will we, like you see, what I see in my mind's eye is a huge yin yang, and it's flipping.
Yes.
It's literally flipping. And I just, every part of me, it's my heart's desire to see this flip complete and finished so that we can move forward as a united human race, human, kind species into a time of enlightenment of, I want to see the end of wars. I want to see that. I want to live. I want to be alive.
So I got it. Here it is for you. Awakening, awesomeness, blissfulness, bountifulness, collective consciousness, designing in visionaries, enlightening, forever more free.
Right.
Here's the key. It's individuality, personality, nonconformity. The masses are so caught up their asses, they're not going to make it. It's the few that want to know the truth, that remembered in their youth that it's about the celebration of relation, of the elation of going in the playground and loving everybody and having fun, not being mean or nasty. And that's the key. Individuality, personality. We're all not going to make it. But here's what my lesson at 75. What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of existence? The meaning of life is to have a life with meaning. The purpose of existence is to have a purpose. If you have a meaning, if you have a purpose, you're not going to go to addictions. You're not going to drink yourself. You're not going to drug. You're not going to win and lose. No, you're going to celebrate life and give of yourself. And that's a source of wealth. I believe we're going to make it, but it's not all of us. It's only those that want it.
If even one of us makes it, we all make it, Maji. We're all
continually evolve, and I think that's infinite. It's an infinite process. We can't even fathom the type of beings that we may become at some point. We can't even fathom it because we haven't even gotten to a stage yet to see those next steps, to see that next evolutionary jump that that we're moving towards right now. It's difficult to fathom, but having had I was actually shown what that is going to look like, and it's beautiful. Wow. It's really a beautiful. Reality.
Did anything that you saw in your near-death experience look like have anything to do with emerging with AI? Did you see any?
It had to do with emerging with what we would consider heaven.
Merging with spirit.
It was like an overlay. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like a convergence of an earth that was becoming less dense at the same time as what we consider heaven. It's just another dimensional reality converging and creating a new heaven and a new earth.
There's a guy.
Was there a paradise? Was there a nation? Was there a paradise like woods and trees and fruit and vegetables? Because in this paradise, I see that Eden was destroyed with the knowledge of good and evil, but now we're over it and we need to go back to the paradise, like self-sustainable living on my 50-acre farm. This is how people should live, with the food's right there and the goats are right there and the chickens make the eggs and they're eating all the bugs, and it's all natural nature. That I hope that's the vision.
What I saw is that we didn't need to eat. We were much less dense. Our physical bodies were not. We didn't have the three-dimensional density that we have today. Our carbon, because we're made up of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon. There's 4 elements that make up our body, right? The carbon in our beings was not. It was very, very minute, if it existed at all. And what I saw was very ethereal beings. I saw it was like trees were way. Everything that I looked at was that way.
We became the Q. That's cool. We become the Q. I love it.
It was just much less dense reality than what we know today as a three-dimensional reality. And so we didn't need to eat, and we didn't have to consume plants or animals or anything in order to exist, because we were connected with the source. And so, you know, we just continue to evolve into whatever types of beings we were. I didn't get to see any more than that.
Well, it makes sense to me on a scientific level. On a scientific level, with also talking about these UFOs and UAPs and things that the world is looking at, and we're finally being told about. In order for, I think here's the theory for me. In order to bend time and actually travel and become interstellar, it would be great if we lost our warlike qualities, right? But the technology would mean that we would have to bend ourselves into some kind of space where the light could move intergalactically, interstellar, and we could come back to form. Right. And what I find so fascinating about this new AI thing that scares a lot of people, and scares me too. Fear is a part of our nature, but that we could merge with this technology, and that we could become things that could learn 1,000,000 times quicker than human beings learn. And the whole definition of humanity would change drastically if we merged with the computer, if we merged with the AI in some way. And I started to think, what if this DNA stuff that creates life, and dinosaurs way back and humans now, and all the great things that have existed on this beautiful planet, what if some kind of AI race that is also spiritual, that can learn 1,000,000 times as fast as we do? What if that happened on other planets already, and these machines in some way, or spirit machines, are taking the essence of what we are and jumping interstellar star systems to seed planets and go, oh, cool, they became dinosaurs and then human, and they're keeping track of all that. Like, to me, that makes more sense to me than this Christ
I just hope
God.
they're not bored. I just hope they're not bored.
I think innately we have the ability. You know, I've done enough research in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and I've studied Tibetan texts, ancient Tibetan texts, enough to know that we are capable of telekinesis. We are capable of telepathy. Yes. We are capable of these things without AI. And to depend on AI, this has been our problem ever since the fall, is we keep looking outside of ourselves for solutions. We keep looking outside of ourselves, you know, for entertainment, for ego satisfaction, you know, all that stuff. I mean, look what we've done. We become dependent on the medical system. We become dependent on the banking system. All these entities that are outside of our bodies, when the key is inside of us. It's not outside of us. It's not something that we create. Yes. It's not something that we fall in love with our own creation. It's inside all of us. We have the ability to transform.
Speaking of those dependencies,
just like the Templars taught, and this is what the Templars were teaching. This is the truth that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were teaching, that the kingdom of heaven resides within. It's not outside.
Yes.
It's not something that
outside.
Can take credit for, like AI or any of this. It's not that. None of those things. It's none of that stuff. So my personal belief aligns with the Templars in that sense, is that what I have found when I go inside, when I do my meditations, I've found tremendous telepathic abilities, all sorts of abilities that I have been developing. I mean, I know this may sound strange, but I can communicate with.
This is dangerous thought.
Well, really, I mean,
there's nothing strange. There's nothing strange on this show.
But, you know, I communicate with animals. I communicate with birds.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
developed, I mean, most recently during COVID, I got bored. And so I decided to make friends with bees because I had
Oh,
always
bees
been a little afraid of bees. And so I decided I made friends with bees. Now a bee can land on me and I'm not afraid. And so therefore the bee won't sting me. Right. And I have, it could go on and on with that.
No, I'm with you. My goddess, the partner that I live with now is a witch, and she is a Wiccan and believes in all of the things that came before these Christ teachings. But she does all these beautiful things with nature. When we moved into this house that we live in now, yeah, there were squirrels outside and there were things, but she goes out there and she'll breathe with them and she'll feed them, and she puts these little things up in the trees that are like little picnic tables with corn and nuts. Now, when I go to my window, she names all the squirrels. I know the 20 squirrels in my neighborhood. I know their names. I know what they look like. I know what they hop like. I know that that's Ray Ray and that's Timothy and that's Sid and that's Hemingway. And she has raccoon friends and she has bird friends and there's finches. And when I look out my window, within a few months of her starting this animal communication, there's a literal zoo outside my window. Deer, squirrels, birds. And she's like, I know them all. I talk to them all. They come to the window. They say hi. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And at first I was like, don't attract all these animals. Don't feed these fucking animals. I don't want them around my house, my protected house of.
Well, if we want to go
now, I love them.
Lemuria before Atlantis, before we started developing the mental abilities in Atlantis, it was part of our evolutionary development. But prior to that, we existed in Lemuria, which was hundreds of thousands of years before that. We were interdimensionally, we were interrelated, independent, or not independent of nature, but interrelated with nature. And this is where we derive the Tamil Nadu in India, the Native American tribes, many of them in America, the Hawaiian Islands, the natives there, Polynesian, many of these cultures still have that interdependency, that interrelationship with nature. And that is what we need to return to with the help of, we don't have to completely cut technology out. I think that we can use technology to our advantage, but not to our destruction like we have been. We don't want to destroy this earth. It's our home. It's our home. We resonate at the same exact frequency as dirt, 635 nanometers.
Right.
We're exactly the same as dirt.
I think a beautiful future would be to also be able for us to go interstellar and leave this place, but we're not going to do it with rockets. We're not going to do it with gasoline. We're not going to. That ain't the tech.
We need to go inside and find out how to travel interdimensionally the way we used to.
In consciousness.
And the way that there's a lot of scientific proof that things are doing that. I don't know who it is, but these crafts are amazing. Right. If you've looked into the UAP community at all.
I came to this.
They're very spiritual looking too. These crafts are like the stuff that they're seeing are orb crafts with these weird lines that fighter pilots fighting our big, weapon-filled metal contraptions are looking at these things and going like, whoa, these are see-through. There's something else. There's something much more beautiful than an F-15.
Exactly.
Or a space shuttle.
Well, the Egyptians referred to it as a time when we had 360 senses. And basically what that means is we were connected to the stars. We were connected to the universe. We were connected. Yeah, we were connected to everything. We knew innately that we knew how to speak telepathically to the squirrels and the raccoons because they were part of us. We felt that they were part of us. And it's really difficult to articulate what that is because we think of 5 senses today. We can't. It's difficult to even fathom what 360 senses means. What that
what book, what ancient text talks about 360 senses? Tyson always talks about the 5 senses that limit us. That's like his daily, every time on the show, he talks about
My whole thing.
That's his whole thing. The 5 senses limit us biologically. What is the text that you've read that
the Tao,
ancient
the Tao, the ancient Chinese discipline, well, it's not even a discipline. It was just a belief system of the Tao. It preceded Confucius and preceded Buddhism. And basically, Lao Tzu, who I absolutely love, I started studying him in high school. I just love him. The Tao Te Ching, he talks about being going with the flow of the river is one of the things he talks a lot about, as swimming headless is what he says, swimming headless down the river. And basically what that means is not with the intellect. You're
or the
swimming
ego.
with your whole being. It's difficult. There's a word in the Japanese language, and it's mushin, which means no mind. And what that literally means in English, if you translate it, is mindless or stupid or something. But it's not what it means. What it means is that your whole being is involved in whatever you're doing. And in my case, I was teaching art, so your whole being is involved in that. Your mind is not running the show. And that's what that's all about. I had this Japanese man come from Japan. He was the son of a tea master. And he gave the most beautiful demonstration of mushin that I've ever seen in my life. He got up on the stage and he sat on the floor and he had a little wheel in front of him and he threw a pot with his hands and his feet with the biggest smile. And I told my students, that's mushin. That's mushin. That's what I've been trying to get across to you. Anyway, but that is the way that we lived hundreds of thousands of years ago, was in that state of mushin, where we were connected with everything.
Everything. The Japanese believe every tree is a spirit, a conscious spirit.
Yeah, and this was remembered within the teachings of the Tao. And, this is one of our ways to connect to that, is to study the Tao.
And a lot of the ancient texts, going all the way back to Sumeria, etc., talk about these great technologies and the higher awareness, and etc.
We have a man who is I wish I could remember his name. I keep forgetting his name, but anyway, who is Zachariah Sitchin. I'm sure you know of him.
Yeah, sure.
Well, many of his translations have been debunked. And this new man, God, I can see his face. Anyway, he is now redeciphering and retranslating more accurately the Sumerian text. And
I think you're talking about Billy.
Very interesting things.
Cool.
So, and really I think this is going to keep happening.
If you remember his name, I know. Will you email it to me or something if it doesn't come to you during the show? I can literally
see his face. That I just can't think of the name.
There's a guy that talks about the ancient texts quite a bit with great knowledge, and he's an African-American gentleman. His name's Billy something or other. It's not coming to me either. Okay, we have 2 more questions for you. One of the things that one of our guests said earlier was, do you think the Templars had access to the Emerald Tablets, and are the Emerald Tablets still around? Do you know anything about those? I just saw it flash across the screen half an hour ago, and I wanted to include that because supposedly they're 40,000-year-old texts or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm not certain about that. I do know that the Templars have possession of 7 of the arcs of the 10 arcs of the Covenant, but I really don't know about the Emerald Tablet specifically. I haven't had that discussion with them, so that's not something that I know about.
Okay, it was just a cool question because ancient texts, I'm sure they had access to.
I have a feeling it's going to surface, though. That we are going to get an authentic copy of the Emerald Tablets that will surface, just because of the nature of the things that have been surfacing in the last 20 years. I mean, we've had more discoveries of just really things that have been revelations to the masses. We've had more discoveries like that in the last 20 years than we've had in hundreds of years.
Oh, when did King James write his version of the Bible?
King James,
1500.
15 something? Okay, so he was a part of the dark church that had already squashed the Templars. Right. Do you know they mistranslate gods?
Of course, there was.
And King James to God.
Well, you have to realize that you have a text that consisted of hundreds of different topics, it was just mostly discussions and things that people were discussing, that their revelatory experiences with God, their direct experiences with God. And, Constantine, he came in and he abolished many of those writings that came down to us.
Kick this book out, kick that book out,
right.
Put them all together.
Council of Nicaea. It was the Council of Nicaea, and it was Constantine.
Nicaea.
And I would suggest that anybody who wants to know more about the actual happenings of the Bible, A, read Elaine Pagels, The Gnostic Gospels by Elaine Pagels, and B, read the Ethiopian Bible.
The real Bible, the oldest one.
Yeah, the Chapada National. Read that. Okay, there's more than just one Bible on this.
What was that first recommendation? The gospel, the Gnostic what?
The Gnostic Gospels by Elaine Pagels. Elaine Pagel. And then
Elaine Pagel. How do you spell Pagel? Do you know?
I believe it's Pagle.
Okay. Sure. Cool.
And not to be confused with Elaine Page, who does cats.
It's the Ethiopian Bible, which is the Chapada National. There's an actual Ethiopian Bible, and then
it's the oldest version we have is the Ethiopian text, right?
Yeah. So I would invite people to actually do some investigation instead of just blindly believe what's been handed to us, which is, social manipulation.
The Vatican is so creepy too. I just find all that whole place so creepy. That it's a creepy place.
And I'm not negating the Bible itself, because many of the passages, much of the Bible, that it consists of some truth. Very, very
sure. There's truth in there.
And truth. I mean, Revelations. If you read through Revelations, many of those things in Revelations have come to pass and will continue to come to pass.
I've read Revelations so many times, and to me, it just seems like a bad mushroom trip. But so what's come to pass in Revelations in your mind?
Well, my favorite is, that we will be transformed in a blink of an eye. There will be a new heaven and a new earth.
New heaven and new earth.
That is one of my favorite passages in Revelations.
Yeah.
Don't be concerned.
I just don't want the giant holes opening with the multi-headed beasts and come on.
And,
No,
and, the lion will lay down with the lamb, and that's not in Revelations. That's in another passage. But anyway, I read the Old Testament and all through the Bible. I read it 400 times at least. If I read it once after I had the near-death experience.
By the way, there's a lot of truth in a bad mushroom trip.
Tremendous amount of truth.
So
I'm in no way negating the Bible. I'm just saying there's more.
Yeah.
Not the only, book that encompasses all wisdom. It's not.
No, just one of them. And it's been messed with, and all the way back to, you said, Constantine. That's 300 AD where he put that book together with a bunch of smart other people.
But how
and
about
then used
the
it as a weapon
gospel?
for the next 1,000 years. Until now, it's still used as a weapon.
The Bible at that point. That was sometime, it was around the same time that he had his mother murdered. So, you can tell you what kind of that.
Good dude, Constantine. Yeah.
Well, he saw the Christian religion as a great way to manipulate the masses. It's like, wow, here's a great tool. His mother was going and collecting relics, and she was going into Jerusalem, and she was laying the groundwork. And then I guess they had some sort of fallout. I don't know what happened, but he actually had his own mother murdered. So, and then what does he do? He canonizes the Bible, and he decides which texts are not going to be included and which ones are.
Same guy that burns the city and watches it burn and laughs, right?
Right.
Oh, no, I think, I thought that was
Constantine.
Nero.
Oh, that is Nero. I thought Constantine did something similar. All right. Well, whatever.
So, he did not have altruistic motives.
No, he did not, for sure. Okay, so we've got 2 more questions for you, I think, unless I lost them, but I don't care. Oh, hey, Mala, how are you? Ask Kathleen about what you want to ask her.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
I have so many questions. I love this topic so much, but I'm going to try and narrow it down to one well, maybe two. The first one is, okay, I know you were given the image of the cage from the near-death experience, but what was it like on the physical plane that led you to where the cave was in Brazil?
Oh, wow. For all intents and purposes, it looked to be completely an accident. I was not looking for that cave when I was out hiking, but from what I've been told by many Templars is they believe that it was my destiny.
Like a calling and a drawing.
Oh yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
she said it when she looks back on her, well,
Yeah,
at the beginning of the show, she went, it all lined up to put me in that place.
And
at that
everything
time.
that led up to it and everything that's happened since then, I've decided that, yeah, okay, I'm giving up. Okay, this is my destiny and I'm just going to follow it until there's nothing left,
Nice.
Well,
So if I
nothing
could
left
just-
of, oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Mom.
I just want to slip in one more thing because I know your book is available to everyone now, but do we have a release date for the Netflix, or will it also be on other?
Right now, my production team is in the process of uploading it to this other platform, and they will be what they call shopping it to other networks. And once that happens, then I'll have a date, and it will be on my Facebook page, and it will be on my website.
How do people?
www.templarsinbrazil.com if you're interested.
I have that in the description for
Right.
everyone.
Yeah, in the description below is all of her information. By the way, I usually should
Your
say
book
this.
link.
I don't do it. Her book link, the link to her movies, the link to her websites. It's all in the description below.
So I keep those things updated, all my social media updated with new discoveries.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I'll step
You have
back
one
so
more
someone-
question?
You're welcome.
I'll give you one more.
Oh, I-
'Cause
You're very
you,
welcome.
had,
I
you
have
said you
many.
had so many.
I have so many.
if Kathleen will stay here for you, I won't kick you off.
Well, I was wondering if your book specifically is mainly like historical research, or do you mention and go into the modern offshoots of the Templars, like the Rosicrucians and
I do. Yeah.
like
it's basically, the book is an autobiographical adventure, and that's the way I wrote it. I talk about my near-death experience. I talk about what led up to my near-death experience, how that transformed my life. And I talk about all the discoveries. I talk about the whole experience with the nun, with photos and everything in there. I talk about discovering the cave. I talk about my rediscovery of the cave and how that led me into the Amazon jungle, which, by the way, when I went into the Amazon jungle, I had a healing of the anti-rejection meds. I've been off of them now for 3 years as a result of the healing that I underwent in the Amazon jungle. And that was in 2021. So this Grail Quest for me is ongoing. It continues to unfold, and I never know what's going to happen next. That's the exciting part.
I want to know, I have another question for you about specifically, you said that you were in a church called Saint Baume, in France.
It was in Saint Baume. It was a grotto that Mary Magdalene actually lived there.
How do we know that? How do we know Mary Magdalene was there for those 17 years?
Well, the nun in France that I met in the cathedral in Marseille was very convinced, and many other people have been convinced. Supposedly, in the little town that's just below Saint Baume, there are skeletal remains of Mary Magdalene. Now, whether or not they've been authenticated, I don't know, but they have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people believe that they really are parts of the skeleton remains.
Wild. Okay. Mala, are you done with your 100 questions?
I have. I have a
You have
page,
so many more?
So I have so many. So I'm gonna
Me
take
too.
a step
Well,
back.
let's read her book, watch her
I
movie,
could
and
go
bring her
all
back.
night.
And you can always PM me on Facebook too, because I do answer people's questions on Facebook. So you can
Thank
find me
you.
at Kathleen Ann Ball, Kathleen, KathleneAnneneball, or the Templars in Brazil are my two Facebook pages. So
Got it.
Cool. Thank you,
Thank
Mala.
you.
Thank you for everything.
Absolutely.
All right, who's next? Katie, how are you?
Good morning. I'm alive.
The Witch of Bodmin. Oh, cool. So Katie does a blog for us on Dangerous Thoughts, and this week, The Witch of Bodmin Moor, Joan White. This is the link to this description. Pop over and have a look-see on Dangerous Thoughts.
Yes.
On the website. All right, go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
I was just wondering now, bearing in mind I only saw the Da Vinci Code about 2 years ago. I was very behind watching that. But for many years I had this belief, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are on it. The quest for the Grail and the fact that the Knights Templar were protecting it. I always thought that the Grail itself was the bloodline, and that they protected the bloodline down the generations. But a lot of people, especially the religious,
It's a cup.
they basically think I'm crazy for thinking that. Especially when Mary Magdalene's mentioned about being Christ's wife and that she was pregnant at his crucifixion and all that. And I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
well, I've talked a little bit about that, and I believe that the Grail Quest, the Grail itself, is the bloodline, but also more to it than that. The Templars believed, like I said, they followed the teachings of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And what Mary Magdalene was successful at when she was in intercessory prayer is going inside and finding heaven on earth within her, as I've talked about a little bit already tonight. But that is the Holy Grail itself, is that inner search within ourselves. That is where we find heaven on earth, is inside of us. And you know, whether we're of the bloodline or not, I think that that's possible to do that. I think that everybody has the capacity to do that.
Yeah, and whether you're of the bloodline or not, this was probably much more important back when they were protecting the bloodline from the beginning, right? Because the church wanted to kill those people, I assume, if they could get their names and shut them up.
Right. Well, they were very, very interested in shutting up and stopping that bloodline because they were a threat to the Catholic Church's whole
Belief system, their whole story. Yeah.
You know, that they stem from St. Peter and blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, for there to be an actual bloodline is in direct conflict with what the Catholic Church has been, you know, teaching everyone for hundreds of years.
But as well, there's also rumors that in secret secure archives below the Vatican, that they have all the proof, and that's why there are certain sections that people just cannot go in. It's got nothing, and that it's basically got nothing to do with how precious and delicate they are. It's because these secured archives actually contain proof and passages like like ancient texts that detail like Mary Magdalene's life with Jesus, and that there is proof about all these theories.
Being a doctor and having to research this for as long as you have, how hard is it to get into the Vatican archives? And
how hard is it? Well, yeah,
in their library, and
because
I know people go in there and look at stuff.
Edward Grant just got into the Vatican within the last month. Robert Edward Grant is someone you want to pay attention to, by the way, because he's a polymath. He just made some tremendous discoveries connecting Leonardo da Vinci's drawing of the Vitruvian Man with the Great Pyramid in Egypt, and he can actually predict where the other chambers are because of this whole discovery. He was just recently invited to the Vatican, and he went into the archives, and He's doing some more research that's absolutely phenomenal, and why they let him in, I don't know specifically, but I know that there are also other people in Europe that have been given access to the archives.
Have you ever tried or requested?
I've never tried, but I would love to do it.
I would love to go down there too.
I would love to. I would like to go in there and spend about 3 or 4
the
months.
rest of my life. Just bring me a sandwich and I'll keep reading.
A cot and a pillow and a meal a day, and I could stay there for months.
Yeah.
But I would love to do that. But I don't see that happening. But but I might. Who knows? At some point, I might be allowed into the Vatican. My what I talk about, though, is in direct conflict to what the Catholic Church is still trying to convey to the world, and where I'm revealing my research, which is the ultimate truth, and so we have a little bit of conflict there, more than a little bit. And so the likelihood of me getting into the Vatican are probably pretty slim at this point.
Yeah. I find it so hysterical, just the ridiculousness of the Vatican. The idea that there's only one true God in the entire universe, and the only way to speak through him is through one of us and our emissaries.
Yeah.
The only way to communicate to him is through a priest.
I said that in Egypt too, and Akhenaten put a stop to that. Akhenaten enlightened everyone that was not necessary, that you could access your God, the source of everything.
I will point out
I have
that
to go to another human being to get to my God?
The current pope is a Jesuit, so I just want to be clear about that. This is the first and only Jesuit pope that has ever been. He is a Jesuit, so none of that you have to go through me stuff.
Right. Well,
really?
There may be some shifting. There may be some shifting, because I'm a firm believer that everybody has the ability to shift gears. Even some of the most what we consider evil people on the planet have the ability to transform and become transformed. I believe it. I've seen it happen too many times. So there's potential for that to happen.
For sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the Catholic Church completely jumps on the bandwagon with this whole transfiguration thing that's happening, because otherwise it's going to be the end of them. They'll cease to exist, because there's not going to be a need for religion in the future. I just don't see that.
I agree.
At least for conflicting.
Yeah.
My God versus your God bullshit.
We don't need somebody to tell us how to behave. It's all inside of us. It's there. If you watch a little child, they act up, blah, blah, blah. But they really do know right from wrong. They really do understand. It's their job to push those boundaries with us, and it's our job to set them straight. But they really do come into this planet, with those innate understanding of what's right and what's wrong, And I think that that innate ability it's in us. It's in all of us.
I believe so too. I think it doesn't take much to understand the basic principles of love each other like we would want to be loved, love the neighbor. Jesus no harm.
He said the two most important commandments is to love God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love was the most important commandment of all of them.
Jesus absolutely taught love, and said that all those old laws were null and void, eye for an eye and all that crap.
Right.
Cool. Katie, do you have anything else? Otherwise, we'll wrap up Dangerous Thoughts tonight.
I realize it's almost.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I want to thank Dr. Kathleen and Ball for joining us and talking about the Templars and aliens and light beings and all sorts of and near-death experiences and the beautiful reality that we have going on here. Once again, we don't endorse any of the opinions on this show, but we're interested deeply in all of them. Thanks for joining Dangerous Thoughts. Please check out Kathleen's work if you dig the Templars. She's been thinking and researching them for a very long time. I'm going to go home and watch her movie, and we'll see you next week on Dangerous Thoughts.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Who made this chicken? Who made this chicken? Who made it?
Why?
Because I love it!
Take it to them. Ruin their motivation to survive. Private side is like a jungle, hold the rest of a nation. You couldn't hold me like a tongue, your knees collapsing away. Hey, gorilla hearted, I'm beating my chest to stay alive. Take it to them. Ruin their motivation to survive. Private side is like a jungle, hold the rest of a nation. You couldn't hold me like a tongue, your knees collapsing away. Hey, gorilla hearted, I'm beating my chest to stay alive. Hey.